So we will break around about 12:30ish, or maybe a little bit before, we'll see, for an hour and a half for lunch. So we were standing outside there a moment, in the sun. It's really great to be in the sun. I like to think of it as there being two suns. And what we're aware of, when we're a doer, we're only aware of one sun. And that's the sun that shines upon us from the outside. And that sun shines on all our doings. And on all the doings it shines on, they will come and go. There is a beginning and an end to them. There is a beginning and an end to everything that sun shines on. But there's another sun. That sun has beams. There's another sun that has beings. Its radiance is being. And it shines upon us too. So the one shines from this way, from the physical, and the other shines from the vibrational. And they're both required nutrition. They're both required nutrition. The one really supports our physical aspect of our being in a very powerful way. It really supports that experience we're having. It supports the human experience we're having. And it supports this physical vehicle. It enables us to have the food to eat to support this physical vehicle. And everything else is coming out of that sun, right? And that's why we can see why so many cultures worship the sun god, in the realization that without the sun, that someone said just now, it takes 8 minutes for the rays to get here. If it switches off in 8 minutes, it's all over for the doer. Right? And the sun will be part of the facilitation of our evolution. It's part of it, always has been part of the facilitation of our evolution. Because we have this idea, for example, like we're so infatuated with ourselves that we actually believe that we're causing global warming. It's like us. It's because of what we're doing, right? Which we're participating in it. But it doesn't explain the global warming on other planets that is happening simultaneously. It doesn't explain it. It doesn't explain. We have weird weather on this planet, right? We're having the weirdest weather. In fact, there is no more climate. Say goodbye to climate. There is just weather. Right? There's just weather. But they're having very strange weather on Mars too. Strange weather all over the place in the solar system. Right? So we like to say, okay, we're doing it. Right? But the sun is going to show us just how much control we have over everything. It'll be part of that journey of facilitating that. It will play a role in giving us something we can't do anything about, so that we have an opportunity to awaken to our state of being. And what awakening to the state of being is about awakening to the radiance of another sun, and starting to receive that nutrition, the soul food. Right? Because there's soul food, and then there's this other food that supports the vehicle for the soul. And our suffering comes from spitting out the soul food and trying to get all our nutrition from this sun. Right? Try and get all our nutrition from the doings in this world, from the food grown in this world, from the company we keep in this world. We try and get all our nutrition from that. instead of realizing that that is part of our nutrition. We can't live on bread and bread alone. There is another bread. And we've been told to, give us our daily bread. It's actually not about the loaf, right? You can bake your own loaf of bread. But there's other bread that's being given to us, but can we digest that food? Can we digest that nutrition? Because the moment we start digesting that nutrition, something else will start to unfold in our experience. And that's really what this evolutionary possibility is about. It's about awakening to that radiance as something very real and tangible, and digesting that food. Right. So what does that look like? Every day we are given opportunities to enter this awareness and to cleanse this, because really all that's going on the planet at the moment, if one really looks at it, is an opportunity to take care of this. That's the opportunity. And how we either take that invitation or we don't. If we don't take that invitation, we are going to drive ourselves further into this awareness, the mental, physical awareness. If we take that opportunity, we enter that awareness. And this is where the evolution takes place. This is where the revolution takes place. Right? And the revolution is what it says it is. It revolves. Right? The plant grows, goes to the compost heap, becomes the plant grows, goes to the compost heap, becomes the plant grows. Right? The plant that fruits, the fruit gets eaten by someone else, that fruit might become something else. Right? So evolution and revolution are very different. Very different. So in every day we're being given an opportunity to participate in our evolution. And it doesn't look like what we think it's supposed to, and that's why it's hard to connect with it. Because we've read these really fancy books that tell us what it's about. And it doesn't look like that at all. So let's take a look at it. Let's use a very normal example of someone arriving at work, right? And they're coming to work, and they're hurrying to work. And they always hurry, and therefore they're always late. Have you noticed that people who are always late are always hurrying? And actually, if you're always late, if you just remove hurrying, you won't be late anymore. Hurrying causes lateness. It's hard to see it initially, but so this person is always hurrying because they're being driven. They don't know in their life they're being driven by a charge. They can't see it. They can't realize it. The charge is coming from the imprinting in the emotional body. We're either in the charge or we're driven by it. I'm either in charge or I'm driven by a charge. And it's very easy, if you hang around anyone long enough, you will be able to see the charge that's driving them by the evidence of the behavior, right? The behavior to control, sedate, whatever that's going on. So this person is hurrying, and they always arrive at work about 15 minutes late, no matter what happens. Even if they leave the home 20 minutes earlier, the traffic will be blocked. And then they'll get to work 15 minutes late, right? And so this is all, when they arrive at work, they're in that state of, we were talking about last night, anxiety. It's already there, right? And they walk through the door, and they look into their boss's office, right? And let's say, who are we going to pick on today? Pick on here, right? So they arrive, and the boss is in the office, and the boss goes, and they see the boss's face, and they go, right? And they go to their office. And immediately their behavior is so deliberate, you can tell exactly what's going to happen from that moment. Because what they don't realize is the moment they looked at their boss, and their boss went, they actually stepped into a perceptual memory bank, into an altered state, into a state of hypnosis. Right? Remember we were talking about, the teapot or the cookie jar? So when they looked at the boss, you see, the thing is, we're told, in some texts people say, oh, this world's not real. It's an illusion. Well, I'll take any one of those people and I'll hit them over the head with a metal pole and I'll tell you how real that experience will be. The illusion will be over. It'll be very real. This is a very real place. It's just, what do we mean by this world is not real? And what that is this. If I look at you and I see a reflection of my Father, I no longer see you. Even though you're there, I no longer see you. You have disappeared. I see a reflection of my Father. That's called illusion. Illusion is an amazing word. Il is in you. Illusion. The il is in you. Right? I see the illusion of my Father being there. Then, if I start to behave around you the way I behaved around my Father, now I'm in a state of delusion. That's the state of delusion, right? So, this is what's happening. Let's say Frank arrives at work. He's late. He looks into the boss's office. The boss is going, right? Snarling or whatever, expression on his face. And from that moment, we enter a perceptual memory bank. And this is the thing about this work. The first aspect of this work is about bringing memory, unresolved memory, to resolution. And it's not a memory like, what did we have for lunch yesterday? Yesterday, if we say, what did we have for lunch yesterday, we get an image of what we had for lunch. We can even smell what we had for lunch if we stay with it long enough. We can tell someone about it. We can remember the taste. That's not the memory we're dealing with in this work. Because the memory we're dealing with is the baton that has been passed from generation to generation to generation to generation. And that baton was imprinted to me in the first 7 years of my life. And so I have a very personal story that I can tell about my imprinting. But that same emotional signature was put into my parents, and they have a story about it too. And it was put into their parents, and they had their story about it too. And you can be sure all the stories are different. So the story is not going to help us. The story is not the truth. The memory is not what I can say about it. So therefore, understanding my childhood does not accomplish anything. It accomplishes an understanding of my childhood, which is a story. And to be sure, that story is not true. It's a good one. Stand up in a court of law, but it's not true. It's a story, right? What is the memory here? In this work, what we're dealing with, the memory, is an emotional signature. It's a feeling, a felt aspect of our experience. So what's happening is, as I walk past the door and I look at you and you look at me in a way, because it's all been set up. I'm late. I'm in a state of anxiety. This is not supposed to be happening. This experience is not valid, right? I'm moving through the experience. You look at me in a certain way. It reminds me of something, but I don't know, because I'm a physically transfixed being. I look at the physical world as the cause. It's happening to me, not through me. And I look at you, and you remind me of this reminds me of something, and immediately I feel a certain way. And let's say I have an deeply unintegrated experience with my father that happened in the first 7 years of my life, which attached to it is the spell anger. When that comes up, it makes me feel angry, right? It makes me feel angry. So the moment you look at me that way, in the predicament I'm in this moment, and you look at me, the first thing that is triggered is the memory. Boom. And the memory is a felt signature. And I have a spelling for that. I call it anger. But I don't even know this is going on. I have no idea. All that's happening to me is that memory arises, and as it arises in my emotional body and comes into my awareness, I now see the world through this lens. That's the way I see the world. The world has become a teapot or a jar of cookies, and don't tell me otherwise. You are making me angry. You are responsible for me being angry. Right? And from the moment I step into that perceptual memory bank, I am in an altered state. Truly am in an altered state. I'm in a state of I'm going to even enter a deeper state of hypnosis now. Because from the moment that it happens, there's only two courses of action that are open to me in an altered state. Right? The one is I'm either going to do something mental, which will happen first. Remember, the memory is triggered, it's an emotional. We're going along the pathway of awareness now. First, then the mental happens, then the physical. And this is how the mental happens. As I see you, and the emotional state is triggered, the memory, the felt signature, the deep sense of discomfort, right? And which is the resistance around that unintegrated memory that's going on, the friction, the heat around that, right? That comes up, but I'm not aware of that because I don't have emotional body awareness. I don't have insight. Everything's happening outside, right? The very first thing that I do as I move past that office is I enter the story, the mental. I don't deserve to be treated this way. I don't. I get my work done on time. I mean, really, I do all the work that I'm asked to do. I don't deserve to be treated this way, right? I start to tell the story. I enter the state of self-hypnosis, right? And so there are two things that are going to happen from the point that I start telling the story. The one is I might take physical action. I may go directly into physically doing something so that I feel better, because I feel deep anxiety now. I feel very uncomfortable. And all I want to do now is to stop this discomfort. That's all that's happening, right? I either want tea or I want a cookie, right? So I'm going to do something. If I do something physical to do it, it may look like this. Excuse me, but I've had enough. This is my resignation. You can stick this job. I'm going to go and work for someone who appreciates me, right? And I'm gone, right? And I'm still, this state of altered state is going to go on for a while, but I feel good. I feel better. I showed him. I stood up for myself. One for the workers. Right? So I go to the bar that night, right? I'm with my buddies. I showed him. What happened? I just handed in my resignation. I'm not taking any more of that stuff, right? And because I'm in the strong space, I'm buying the drinks. And while I'm buying the drinks, everyone supports me. Yeah, you're the man. Buying the drinks, have another shot. Yeah, you're the man. Tell us what happened. Wow, boom, right? Eventually, I'm not buying the drinks anymore. And then someone is going to ask the question, so what are you going to do now? Right. Suddenly the altered state starts clearing. Ooh, right? And I go home that night and I wake up the next morning and the altered state has passed. Right? It's been released. It hasn't been resolved. It just was released. And I wake up in the next morning and I don't have a job. And sure as hell, I'm not going to get a good reference letter from him. Right? It's not going to happen. And now what? And I say, what the hell happened? Who was that person? Who was that mad animal that took over and destroyed my life? Right? You know what it's like when you get that email from somebody that really annoys you and you go, send. No, get back. No. Oh my God. Who was that mad person who just sent that email, right? We all do it. We all do it. We all do it, right? Because what happens is, and this is why, it is futile to get down on yourself because you go into a state of reaction. Futile. It is just as futile to get down on yourself because you feel uncomfortable when you're in a state of reaction. Futile. This is all valid. But really, what is to be realized is that from the moment we are triggered and enter that perceptual memory bank and that altered state, we really are in an altered state. We really are not going to behave normally. You cannot expect any normal behavior out of someone in an altered state. So the one thing we'll do something physical to try and impact our experience. The other thing is we may do something mental, right? It'll look like this. We need to have a talk. If anybody comes to you and says, we need to have a talk, realize that you are dealing with someone who's in a delusional state. Do not try to reason with someone who's in a delusional state. Do not join someone in the state of delusion. Because the moment you join that person, you are validating that the teacup is a teacup and the cookie jar is a cookie jar. You are validating the state of hypnosis. Right? The best thing you can do is allow that person to express themselves and maybe release what's going on so that they can return to their normal mundane state of awareness. Right? At which point they will most likely apologize. Or not. But they will realize whenever anyone returns to their mundane state, we all look at that person and say, who was that animal that took over my life? That's what possession is. If you want to understand possession, what possession really is, these energies within us, the fear, anger, and the grief that are imprinted, we have given them life. Remember this. They are very powerful. They are alive. We feed them. We feed them. We bow down at their altar almost every day. Whenever I do anything out of fear, in other words, when I use fear as the causal point for impacting my experience, for making adjustments to my experience, for making my choices and decisions, I am bowing at the altar of fear. I've taken fear as my God, not love. When I do anything out of anger, I bow down at the altar of anger, and I feed it, and it gets stronger. When I do anything out of grief, I bow down at the altar of grief. And the reality is, all our religions bow down at the altar of fear, anger, and grief. That is their God, and you must realize that at some point. You will realize that. But don't serve the God of love. And that's just a natural state we're in. We are being driven, while we are being driven by this emotional charge, it has immense power. It has immense power. There is no human being, when triggered, who goes, oh, I'm not triggered, I'm fine. Right? And pretending everything is okay when you actually want to kill the person in front of you is equally invalid. The thing is it's valid. That's how I feel. That's what's real. At that point, it's about whether I respond or react to it. If I react to what happens, I'm bowing down to the altar of fear, anger, and grief. And if I take an action out of anger, I resign out of anger, or I do the talk or I come and talk to you out of anger. Because when I say, we need to have a talk, what I'm really saying is, I'm here to control and sedate you in such a way that you behave in a way that I feel better. And if you do, if you allow me to control you in that way, I'm going to feel better. This is going to work out. If you don't, this is not going to work out. All right? So, whenever I do anything out of fear, and this is something, once we see this, we can take deeper responsibility for it. Whenever I do anything out of fear, anger, and grief, I am taking fear, anger, and grief as the causal point. And whatever is the causal point is the outcome. A good example right now that we can look at, because the world at the moment is the mirror, a good example is the Iraq War. That was done out of fear, anger, and grief. Right? And what has come out of it? It has sown a harvest of fear, anger, and grief that we haven't even yet begun to comprehend. That is spreading all over the planet, right? because that is its causal point. And you know who benefits from that? The gods of fear, anger, and grief. Lovely banquet, right? Lovely. It makes that stronger. So realize that when we talk about possession, talk about someone who's possessed, you can see possession every day. Whenever you lose your temper, you're possessed. You are. You know you are. You are no longer yourself. And we call it being, I am beside myself. I have left the building. Something else has taken over and is running the show. It's not this, that's for sure. It's this being distorted into something else. It's not love. It's a definition of love. Fear, anger, and grief are love defined. They are love with conditions placed upon them. In other words, the energy of the vibration has been distorted into a particular condition that is so uncomfortable now that we call it, have a name for it. But it's actually still love, it's just been, there is only the vibrational, but it can be distorted, right? If you think about it, if you think of a projector, remember the old slide projectors? I don't know if some of you remember the slide projectors, in which you had a slide projector, right? And you shine a light, the electricity, the light comes through, and you put a slide in, and the slide shows an image on the wall, right? Even a movie works like that when they show a movie, right? They run it through the light. It's just white light. But whatever image is run through becomes the image on the wall. Our state of hypnosis is to believe that the wall and the image on the wall is what's true. And what this work is about is saying, no, there's a slide in the slide projector. It's been passed from generation to generation. You can take it out if you want. It requires taking responsibility for it, right? So in this situation, as I walk past the door and see my boss go, I'm entering an altered state of consciousness. And in that altered state of consciousness, because of my discomfort, what I want to do is push this discomfort away to project it outward. And I will project it outward through the story, through the mental, and through the physical behavior. I will push it away. When my awareness will go, I'm trying to get my awareness to move away from this. I'm going this way. I'm not using this to go in there. Right? And whatever I do, whatever action I take to make myself feel better will hurt me. Will hurt me and those around me in some way. And it won't resolve this. Because if I leave and go to another job, I will manifest this experience again. Because it's not happening to me, it's radiating through me. Right? Wherever we go, there we are. Wherever we go, there we are. Right? So that's our state. In fact, most of us live in the state of reaction, just various degrees. We're either sane or we're mad. You can't be both. And where we are at the moment is we're in various degrees of madness. It's just various degrees of it, right? Which is various levels of emotional imprinting that we're going through. Because whenever that emotional imprint comes up, it is going to transform the nature of our behavior in that moment. None of us are immune to it. And thank goodness that's so, because the only way to transform it is to become aware of it. You can't get rid of it. And it's actually meant to come up at the moment. It's meant to come up at the moment. This is meant to be taking place, right? We're at the moment, because this upset that's happening isn't an upset, it's a setup. Right? It's a setup. It's deliberate. It's completely intended. It's valid. That's what I'm saying. We have to embrace this experience as valid. And in the moment I embrace it as valid, then I have a choice to react or to respond. Right? So the first 6 weeks of the presence process, for example, this altered state is so powerful. There isn't anyone I know who, when triggered, sees clearly. Because we're seeing through the prism, we're seeing through the lens of the emotional imprint. So what this is about, the first step in this work, is regaining consciousness when we're in an altered state. Becoming present within the past. Gaining presence in that moment. And in the first 6 weeks of the presence process, we spend the whole first 6 weeks of the procedure teaching ourselves a technique that enables us to gain presence, to start responding to a memory, because the memory isn't taking place in here, it's taking place in here. And we don't have insight for that yet. So because we don't see it inside, it's reflected outside. And what we have to do is be able to recognize a memory. The war in Iraq is a memory. It really is. The war between the Persians and the Christians is old. It's been going on for a long time. This is just the latest version of that memory coming up for cleansing. And we can either respond to it or react to it. We can either talk about it, let's have the talk, or we can physically do something about it, or we can integrate it. Right? So the first step is gaining awareness of what a memory is and starting to do whatever we can do. And actually it takes a not doing. This is where we enter not doing. Can I be within a state in which I would normally do something? Can I be with myself in that state? Right? And so the breathing practice and the text of the book and the presence activation statements, what they're all doing is they're coming together to enable us to start gathering enough presence so that when I am triggered, I can now start moving into a state of consciousness within that altered state. And there's 3 phases to that are going to happen, right? The first stage looks like this. So let's say I'm doing the presence process or anything like that, because there may be other processes on the planet, I'm not aware, but there may be, right? In which I'm aware that this is a memory and I'm doing my breathing and I'm doing the work and I've done the first 5 or 6 weeks through the presence process, right? So I get that I'm being set up and all that. But yeah, I get it here. I don't yet get it here. So what will happen is I'm hurrying to work, right? And I look through the door and he goes, right? And I go, oh. And I go into the story, I don't deserve this. And I go into my office and I slam my briefcase down and suddenly I realize, wow, I just got triggered. I still feel angry, but now I'm aware that that is a setup. That's a trigger. But it still happened. It still took me all the way into my office, and I fumed in my office for 5 or 10 minutes before I regained enough consciousness to go, wow, I got slammed. I got sucker punched by the universe that time. Didn't even see that coming, right? Because you see, the universe knows how to get us. It knows. Right? There's a saying, I shall come as a thief in the night. What does that mean? It means when you are fast asleep in your illusion, you will hear the breaking of glass and be awoken to an intruder. Right? It doesn't mean that at 3 o'clock in the morning, a being in a beautiful white outfit with a halo and angels going, hallelujah, are going to come waltzing down the corridor. It means you are going to get sucker punched when you least expect it. The Christ is the crisis, the one that wakes us up. Boom! Ah! That's the thief in the night, right? That's the thief in the night. So it takes me first a while to regain consciousness. That's the first step. I get upset still. I react. And sometimes I may react. I may go to the point of, really, I can't take it the way and I'm busy telling you that how I'm feeling, and suddenly while I'm talking to you, I go, whoa. I just got set up here real good. You know what? It's okay. Let me just go to my office. It's sorry, not nothing to do with you. Right? Because that's the next level that will happen. The next level is when I get upset and I go, all right, that's a bit stupid, right? And so you get caught in the midst of the upset, in the midst of the triggering. You realize what's going on. It doesn't change the way we feel. It doesn't take the feeling of anger away just because I know that it's a memory, because I know that I'm being triggered and I'm reacting. Doesn't take away this. Understanding doesn't take away what's going on. It never will. It's not about understanding, right? Then the next level, when I gain enough presence, will be that I'm hurrying to the office and I know before I even get to the door what's going to happen. I see it coming, right? And I look in the office and you look at me that way, right? And I walk past and I feel the anger, but now I know. I know that's what you do to me. I know because I know now that this has got nothing to do with you. And because I've been doing my breathing and I've been sitting with the anger for a while and stuff, I have some insight to know that I just never could please my father as a child. I couldn't please my father, and nothing that I would do would please him, right? And so I would run around like a crazy fool trying to get everything done, but it would never be enough. That's why I hurry in relation to my relationship with you. My hurrying is not about anything else, but it's this memory, right? So I know it's got nothing to do with you, but I still haven't resolved it. I have some understanding about it. And that understanding enables me not to attack you. I still feel angry when I see you, for sure. You make me angry. You irritate me. But I know it's got nothing to do with you. But there's nothing, that's as far as I've got. But now I'm ready to enter the work. And the work is about containment. Containment, right? And containment is when I'm going to allow this to be the emotional signature that is surfacing, which I spell as anger. I am going to allow that to be. But what I'm not going to do is entertain the story anymore or the physical behavior. And that is the hardest quest we enter in this work. Not entertaining the story, because anger tells the best stories. Oh man, I love that story. It takes all the blame off me. The story anger tells is always about how that person, right? So containment is about the fact that, yes, I'm in my office, you've just triggered me, I feel this anger in every pore and every cell of my body. It feels like someone is trying to wring my muscles out like a wet towel, And I would love to do anything. I would love to do something to feel better. All I want to do now is feel better. It's kind of hard to be here, actually, to be honest, in this office. But I'm not going to do anything about it. I'm going to do my best to carry on with my work. I probably won't hang out with you very much, because I know it's just going to exaggerate it. But if we have to have a meeting together, I'll sit there and do my best to be there. And I know that the feeling is there, but I'm going to allow that feeling to be there. Containment is, I'm going to allow that feeling to be in the fullness of my awareness. fully aware of it. But I'm not going to believe its story. Because you see, these energies, which we call fear, anger, and grief, while they're in that unconscious state, while we give them life, while we bow to them, they are profound storytellers. Profound. Hypnotize us into believing all sorts of nonsense, right? I'm not going to believe the story, even if it appears absolutely true. And I'm definitely not going to entertain any behavior to try and stop what I'm feeling towards you. I'm just not going to take it out on you, and I'm not going to take it out on myself. I'm going to be with it. And so as I go through the day at the office, I'll sit with this energy, and at some point it may move a bit out of my awareness. It may stay with me all day. And then that evening I'll go home, I'll take care of what I've got to do at home, and then I'll take myself off to a place, go, well, okay, now I've got a bit of quiet time. All right, okay, let's take a look at this, right? So I'll sit and be with myself. And then what I will do is I will use the physical and the mental to enter the emotional. They're useful. So I will use a physical memory, the memory of the encounter I had this morning, right? And I will tell myself the story. Okay, so I was hurrying, I was late to work as normal, and I walked past my boss's door, and he looked at me that way. And that really annoys, I don't know why, but it really, and as I'm telling the story, what will happen is this emotional signature will then begin to resurface, my awareness of it. And the moment it does, then the physical and mental aspect of that story have no purpose. The physical still has a purpose though. Where do I feel it in my body? Where do I feel it? And because if the memory is surfacing, you can be sure there's a body memory. Where do I feel it? So I may feel a feeling here, I may feel warmth in my hands, I may feel a hotness around my face. It doesn't matter where I feel it, it's valid. And what I do is I just be with it. So I sit in the chair, I don't have to close my eyes, I don't have to do any mantra, I don't have to do nothing. It's called not doing. Right? I'm going to be with that discomfort, and I'm going to allow it to be there. And initially what we may find is that you put your attention on it and it goes. It can disappear. Boom. Oh, it's there and it's gone. Because remember, we have mastered pushing this emotional signature. It's been there all our life, since we were children. And we've mastered sedating and controlling ourselves, our awareness of it. It's used to, if our attention comes on it, that it goes into unconsciousness. So initially, that feeling, that emotional state may just move away. And then you can call it up again, tell the story if you want. It'll come back up and be with it. Eventually, it'll stay. You can hook into the physical aspect of it and be with the physical part of it. That's good. And just be there and watch it. And be with it. Not to do anything to it. And it knows how to unfold to a point of resolution. And however it does so, that is valid. Because it can be different for each person. Each person can have their... Some people may feel energy moving up. Sometimes when I sit with it, I burp. That's what happens to me. I get like... Right? Wow. Right? It can be different for everybody. Other people feel energy going up their head. It doesn't matter what it is. The fact is, it will unfold. It will start to move because no condition is being placed on it. It's not being held in place anymore, right? What we don't realize is that when we go into the story and the physical behavior, what we're doing is we're closing off our awareness of the emotional signature. We are closing ourselves to it. We're closing up. And actually, if you feel yourself, when a thought comes up in your awareness that is upsetting to you, notice how your whole being closes to it. And the more you think about it and tell the story, the more closed you become to it. It's a closing off, right? So really what we want is to open to it. I'm sitting here and I'm going to stay open. As uncomfortable as it is, I'm going to stay open. And no one gets this right immediately. Containment is an art. Containment is an art form. Nobody can contain their anger straight away. The story, you'll start telling the story, right? Get up and go and do something in the house. Just Next thing you're off doing something else, right? Wasn't I supposed to be sitting over there with the anger? I'm over here doing something else, right? Watching TV. How did I get here, right? So containment is an art. It really is an art form. We learn to contain by containing. Not by understanding containment, but by actually entering the experience. But what will take place, say for example with this particular predicament, I sit with it, it will go to a point of resolution, which may involve all sorts of experiences. It doesn't matter what they are. But say for me, it's in my gut and I feel this anger and I feel it build. I mean, I'm sit with it, I actually start to feel it build. And it starts to become very uncomfortable. It's almost like I feel my body's getting hotter. And it is, in a way, because the awareness of the heat, of the resistance is now, we're becoming more and aware of the emotional signature. The more I become aware of the emotional signature, the more uncomfortable I become. And it's the tool of awareness that heals. Right? It's the tool of the awareness. That's the tool that we require, awareness. Right? So I place my awareness on it, but it's also very important about what is the intent underlying our awareness. Is my intent to get rid of it? Won't help, because then I'm sedating and I'm actually putting a condition on it. Is my intent to turn it into light? That's going to mess with it. Right? What is my intent? My intent is to allow it to be there, without any conditions, to allow it to be. I'm going to be with it. It's going to be there. That's it. That's my job over with. Now I'm going to be with it, with that awareness. And it will unfold. And so say, for in my example, I go home, I'm working on the anger I'm feeling, and it builds. I will know I'm getting somewhere when I start to feel very uncomfortable, and I actually want to stop this now. No, this is enough now. I just feel really uncomfortable. And then the story starts to happen. You'll notice the mental body will reflect the shift, right? It will start to say things when you're really getting to the point, because alchemy requires containment. Alchemy requires containment. Alchemy is like, a good metaphor for alchemy is a pressure cooker. A pressure cooker doesn't work if you keep taking the lid off. If you keep taking the lid off, you don't build enough pressure in the pot to cook what's in the pot, right? Every time I go into the story within myself and into the behavior, I'm taking the lid off the pot. I feel better because this pressure has gone off, but then eventually the lid gets put back on and it builds up again. And then it manifests in another experience. So containment is saying, lid on, fully aware of the pressure building, let's build the pressure. And the pressure will build up. And I'll get to a point in which I will say something, there'll be words to myself like, can't do this anymore. There's no point. Nothing has ever worked. There's no hope. There's no future. There's no God. There's no point in living. I might as well die. Right? Those type of thoughts, that's called the death experience. In other words, there is a death taking place. Something is dying. Something is dying. The illusion, you being my boss in this, you being my father in this moment, the reality of my father still being here when he's actually not, and all the behavior associated with that, and all the stories are going to die because it's not true. They're going to die. And I am going to go through that death experience. And if I sit with that emotional signature, I'm going to go through a feeling that I am dying. When you do this work, it's called dying daily. I die daily. Right? So I die to it. I will go through a death experience. And at some point, I may even start sobbing. I may go through an emotional experience. Energy in motion, because this energy that's been blocked is now in motion. And I may sob. I don't even know why I'm crying. And I cry and my body shudders. And then it comes to a point of completion. And I feel peace. And while I'm sitting there in that state of peace and calm, I may have some insight about what this was about. Insight. Because that insight comes out of the factors, that anger that I never allowed myself to feel, by sedating and controlling it, that felt perception has always been closed down to me, that aspect of my felt perception. But because I allowed myself to feel it, I awoken that aspect of my felt perception. And now I can feel something about myself. I have that insight awakens. That feeling capacity is now awoken. And through that insight, I receive insight and revelation about my experience. Right? So the mental body would have us believe that I need to understand in order to heal. If I understand my childhood, I'll heal it. Right? But actually what you'll find out through this work of alchemy, that you first go through the healing and come to a point of resolution, and then you receive the insight. The insight comes afterwards, if it's necessary, if it's required. But let's say I have some insight, and I remember, maybe I get a flashing image afterwards, just coming through my head of myself as a child, trying to please my father, and go, okay, well, that's where that was imprinted. And I've been doing that. I see it in my relationships with my friends and my other bosses, and going right through my life. I see the stream of behavior from that point. Wow, that's what I've been doing. That's what that charge has been driven by, that charge all my life, right? But and now when I bring up the image of my boss, there's just peace. In fact, I kind of feel grateful that this happened, because now I've actually resolved this. And I feel gratitude. I don't feel anger, I feel gratitude. Right? And there's a calm and peace about it. And I go to bed that night, and I wake up the next morning, and I kind of feel different. I don't even know, because I feel different. It's just different. It's what's happening. I'm not even thinking about it. And I get up in the morning, and I'm kind of relaxed and stuff, and I go to work, and I kind of get to work on time. I wasn't even hurrying. Right? And I arrive at work and relax, and I look in the office, and he's going, that's right. But it doesn't bother me. In fact, because I've become more intimate with myself around this particular thing, this is the test. The nature of this work with the heart is it must impact my 3D life. If it does not impact my 3D experience, it's not for real. Right? And this is the problem with going to a 7-day retreat and doing the whole namaste thing, and eating all the great food, and feeling at peace with everyone, and having a really groovy time, and then going back to work the next Monday and freaking out because you're overwhelmed by the sound of the traffic and everything is too much, and right? And actually nothing has really been gained, because it hasn't impacted the 3D experience. The very important thing is, if we're going to do work, we better make sure it must impact our 3D experience. Otherwise it's not for real. It's just more mental stuff. And much of the spiritual stuff that we do when we're learning about the mental realm is just actually mental. The way to know that is we do a lot of activity. It doesn't actually change our life at all. Nothing really changes. So it must impact our 3D experience. So if I really resolve this causal signature that came up through the reflection that you were giving me, then when I come in, I actually will feel closer to you. Because I'm more intimate with myself through this, I will be more intimate with you. And instead of just moving past the office, I may stop. Go, hey, how's it going? Right? And I'll be relaxed. How's it going? And you may feel like I'm a bit more open to you, and so you may be a bit more open to me, right? And so we're chatting, and you say, I'm a bit embarrassed to talk about this, but I've been having a problem for a couple of months. I just don't know what to do about it. I'm constipated. And I just feel so uncomfortable, right? And then I realized that your expression had nothing to do with me. You're just constipated. And then I might have the courage to say, you know what constipation means? Can't stop hating. Can't stop hating. Right? You're so angry, there's so much heat in the system that the stomach lining is so dried out, can't actually deal with my shit. I go like, dude, you need to figure out some of your anger, right? Whatever. Right? So it should, if I am really doing the work, it will bring me closer to you. If you're the one who's triggering me. There'll be more intimacy in our experience with each other. I'll feel more deeply connected with you. Because the messenger is the one that we are going to always be grateful to. Always grateful to. Right. And that's why we're almost at lunch. So hold your bladders. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Let's now take a look at this. Let's reframe one of the greatest teachings ever given to us in relationship to this going to the work. In other words, in relationship to my life experience and my life experience being valid, and my life experience is the teacher which enables me to ascend towards vibrational awareness. Right? That this thing, seemingly insignificant event, is the thief in the night that brings me to awakening. Right? There was a great teaching by this really groovy dude called Jesus, right? And in the last moments of him and his posse, because he came with a whole posse, right? Whole crew. And the last moments of him and his posse being around, they demonstrated something. Right? And again, I love that word demonstrate because it puts the demon straight, is what it's about, right? Straighten out the demons. So, the last few moments of that experience, right? We give Judas a really hard time. We call Judas the betrayer, the kiss on the cheek, right? Whenever we get upset, whenever you get upset, next time you get upset, take a close look at what's really happening. What's really going on is you've been betrayed. That's why you're upset. You have been betrayed, right? You have been betrayed. The thing about this experience here, this, whatever the trigger is the kiss on the cheek. It's the upset. It's the setup. It's a complete setup, right? Because the moment that happens, you are going to be taken, for the moment that happens, I'm going to be taken. Anyone who gets upset, the very first thing that happens is we're taken before Pontius Pilate. Right? And Pontius Pilate asks a question. Very powerful question. Are you who they say you are? In other words, when I become an adult in this world, when I become a doer, I'm no longer relating to being as my identity. I'm relating to doing. I've created an entire persona out of my doings. Someone who does things so that I get what I need and want. And that person that I've made, I've manufactured, was never created, was manufactured. That person is the one everyone in the world relates to and has a relationship with. And not only does the whole world relate to that person, but so do I. I have a conversation with that person all day. No, you're not good enough. Yes, you are. Now I'm going to get this right. No, you never do. Whatever it is I'm having a relationship with that person, plus the whole world is having a relationship with that person. And when we get upset, what's happening is that person is being betrayed. And that person is being asked, are you who the world says you are? That's what Jesus was asked. Are you who the world says you are? Because if you are, I will let you go. If you really are this person you created out of all the doings to get what you need and want, if that's who you are, then you can live. Go forth and multiply. But if you're not that person, then you must die. You must go through a death because that's not real. Right? Jesus was asked, are you indeed the King of the Jews? He didn't say, yes, I am, because he wasn't. He was this. The vibration. He didn't try and defend himself. He went, look, if that's what you say I am, that's it. I'm not. Because if you are the King of the Jews, I'll let you go. If you are the person you've made up and manufactured, you can go free. But if you're not, you will die. And the moment you start to die, there's going to be 3 states that you're going to have to go through. The first is fear. First state is the fear, because now we're going to be raising ourselves to the awareness of who we truly are. This person must die, this manufactured expression. And the first state is, remember, we said we go from fear to anger to grief. You can be sure that even though Jesus was intentionally, even though this was a setup, not an upset, it was intentional, that the moment that he knew he was going to be crucified, he went into fear. Why? Human being. Went into great fear. Did he say, you know what, actually, this is not meant to be happening. I really am the king of the Jews, so if you just let me go now and I go on my way, that'll be cool? No. No expression of the fear. It was contained. It wasn't that it wasn't there, it was contained, right? And then the next step is the walk up to the crucifixion. What happens on the walk up to the crucifixion? People spitting on him, beating him, cursing him, right? You take a walk like that, see how pissed off you'll get. You will be so angry if people treat you like that, right? It's the walk of anger, the rage through the mental, right? People behaved mentally. Was there any expression of anger from Jesus? No. Containment. Require that. I need that. That's my nutrition. That's my nutrition. I need to digest that. Contain it. Right? Get to the place of the crucifixion. Who's there? Mom, my companion. There's an immense amount of grief going on. And Jesus knew that the people around him had no clue what was being demonstrated here. And you know the amount of grief that caused to go, it's okay. This is supposed to be happening. But it couldn't do that. That's an immense amount of grief. Any demonstration of grief? No. I need to contain this. Because this is my nutrition, right? And the crucifixion is the most profound teaching we have. Why? Because when we realize nothing that I do with my hands can help me now. There's nowhere else to go but into the heart and feel what's really going on with me. When I realize that my hands are no use to me, all my doings are just sedating and controlling what's really going on, then I might as well hammer my hands down. They're of no use to me. And when I realize wherever I go, there I am. Wherever I go, there I am. Any sacred site, any temple, any doctor I walk to, it doesn't matter where I go. My heart goes with me, and the condition of my emotional body will follow me and will come up wherever I am. I might as well hammer my feet down. They're no use to me anymore. Containment is the official moment of crucifixion. There's no difference to sitting at home with my anger and just being with it and being crucified. In fact, the whole planet right now is being crucified. Right? The chances, are we going to go through the experience or are we going to run from it? Right? And in the crucifixion, once we're crucified, what's going to happen is that is the death. Jesus was a master. He'd been practicing containment for years. Practicing this art. So it took him 3 hours to completely work with that. Right? Took him 3 hours. We're not that good. Okay? We're still training, right? But in 3 hours, what happened? Right? He went through a death experience. Like we go through, if you sit with your charge, you will go through experience. You'll go, this is not working. This is no good. There's no hope. There is no God. And you know Jesus went through that experience too, because he said, Father, why have you forsaken me? That was the moment of his death experience, right? I'm actually going through my death experience now. And then once that had moved through and the awakening to the vibrational awareness, it's done. Just like once you move through those tears into that state of peace, and you can see the world through a perceptual lens of one who's not imprinted about this condition, you will know it's done. It's changed. I can actually see you for the first time. I don't look at you and see a teapot or a jar of cookies. Right? The hypnosis is broken. I've raised myself back to the kingdom. My time around you is not going to be the boredom anymore. It's going to be the kingdom when I'm with you. Right? And I've raised myself. And every day, every single human being is being given an opportunity to take that journey over and over and over. And we don't have to go anywhere to do it. It's brought to us on a silver platter. Right? I come as a thief in the night. I'm there. The Christ is the crisis. Right? And so our level of participation in the journey is the irritation, the annoyance, the upset. It is the life experience we're having right now. The life experience we're having right now is valid. It's just up to us whether we're going to respond to it or react to it. And the moment we start responding, a radiance starts to happen. A radiance. And when that starts to happen, that's a good time to take lunch. Go forth and eat good food. So we'll see you back here 2:00, and we will continue and take a look from 2:00 onwards. We're going to be looking at our situation of our family, our birth family, because our birth family is crucial in this journey. So we're going to reframe our experience of our birth family so that we can all also say, who is my father? Who is my mother? And find out what that's about, right? Okay, so have a good lunch.